This is WeatherBrains episode number 672. This is my NPR style. Welcome to the pre-show. Hey, come on. This is for December 8th. No, wait, December 3rd. Goodness. Jumping ahead. December 3rd, not the 8th. Where did that come from? December 3rd.
You thought you were on vacation already.
I don't know what I'm doing here. It's like, I guess I'm looking at a 3 and thinking it's an 8. But when you're my age, you never know what day it is, why you're here, where you're going. Nothing.
Get off my lawn.
Yeah. Hey, you kids, get off our lawn. So again, for those that don't know, this is the pre-show, the magical time of the program. We share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and we say outrageous things. I think Tony's mad at me. I played the wrong astronomy report last week, apparently. I don't know how that happened. Apparently operator error. Let's see if this is the right one.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy out.
Well, actually, that's the one I played from last week.
Don't play it again.
Well, let me pull up his note here. Let's see here. You don't want me running the board. Not sure where that file came from, but it wasn't what I uploaded. That sounded a year old. I will resubmit the same one for episode 672. No, it actually says 671. I mean, it says Astro WB 671. That's the name of the file, which is what I played last week. So sorry. So what I'm going to do is get that out of the soundboard so I won't get in trouble here. And let's go to the old Dropbox WeatherBrains, and let's see what's in here. 671 for November 25th, 2018. I'll resubmit the same one for the episode 672. So let me drop this in here and see if this is right. It looks like looks like the same one I played last week.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
Mars robotic population increased by 1 today, with the landing of the interior exploration using seismic investigations, geodesy, and heat transport.
Does this sound right?
No, that's definitely about the Mars robot. So, I mean, that sounds like the show that was last week, though, wasn't it?
I mean,
when did the Mars lander land, or the whatever? Because we watched it on. It was during it was on the day of the show.
Let me pull last week's show up. Facebook Brains 671 was Facebook Brains.
Revealing much about the interior.
There it is.
This ultra-sensitive seismograph. Listen to your heartbeat as well. Of the interior exploration used.
All right, hang on here. I'm going to play last week's show. He might break my legs if I foul this up again.
Choose your emails and email at weatherbrains.com. Good stuff to me.
Okay, so these sensors enabling us to. Plus, there's a little
Rice with your astronomy outlook.
Mars robotic population increased by
The same one?
today.
That's the same one I played last week.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
Mars robotic population increased by.
I think you were right, Dr. Stan.
I feel like Bill Murray in what was that movie?
Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day. No, but Tony's note says, I'm not sure where the file came from, but it wasn't what I uploaded. That sounded about a year old.
Maybe he was listening to a year-old WeatherBrains. Hey, Troy, I knew you were there. I was just too lazy to remove your name from the email.
No problem. I need all the ammunition I can get. So
we just can't do the show without you.
So let me go on Dropbox one more time. WeatherBrains.
Well, that was the show about the Mars Rover, so that's got to be right.
And there's not another one in here. The last one he sent was November 25th, which is the one I played last week. So I don't know what to do. I'm so confused.
Just play it again, Sam. That's what I say.
Play it again.
Double down.
I enjoyed it so much. We're going to play it again this week.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, James, I have a proposal for you.
Wow.
The national
Go.
championship game show night. That should be your ham radio show night, since I won't be anywhere near WeatherBrains that night. But
Well, what do you mean? You're just assuming your team is going to win?
no, of course, if it's Oklahoma versus Notre Dame, I'm going to be watching that, of course.
Oh, okay. Okay. We'll do ham radio.
The bet we do. That'll be the bet that I'll have with all the Oklahoma folks. I love college football, so it would be a fun game no matter what. I do not know that we're going to get through Oklahoma, so believe me, I'm not confident. I saw something a minute ago that said we're 73% favorite to win it, and I'm like, oh please. I am very nervous. Maybe if Leroy Jordan comes back and has 31 tackles like he did in the 1966 game.
Troy, so Texas gave it a valiant effort against OU.
Yeah.
But they beat them the first time. I mean, it's 1-1 now. So it's
And get to play Georgia now.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting ball game.
That's going to be a good ball game. There's a lot of good matchups this time.
Yep. My Aggies are going down to the Gator Bowl, I think. Yeah.
Yep, that'll be good.
Yeah.
All right, we may not have any guests tonight.
do what now?
We may not have any guests tonight. They're sure not just checking in, are they?
That's okay. The three of us, we got this.
We got it.
The four, Aubrey's here. The four of us, this could be the greatest show ever.
Sounds
Just
like a
because
title of a Grover Washington song. Just the four of us. Will that get us a takedown notice, James?
Yeah, I got that stinking nasty letter from YouTube about playing about this one. And I'm just going to stop because we'll get another nasty letter.
Yeah, double down again.
There you go. There you go.
After your chat, after you're just lambasted for a couple of paragraphs, that they say you're not in trouble though. So, you're not going to jail.
Yeah, it was so funny when I was uploading my video on Sunday morning to YouTube. I uploaded it and I turned around and did something and came back expecting there to be 19 minutes left to go on the upload, and it was already processing. And I was like, "What the heck?" So I stopped the process, went back out, and uploaded again with this incredible internet now, James, and you know this because you use it. It uploads in 12 or 15 seconds.
Oh, it's mind-boggling.
Well, Bill,
Kevin,
you can actually watch movies on the internet now. Do you know that?
Yeah, but I can't. But I won't be able to make it all the way through the show without some.
Yeah, I'm just kidding with you.
With some sort of. Bill sounds like a Cylon now. What is that? Earn money with our Facebook videos. What is that?
Kevin is going to love this. Earn money with your videos on Facebook, Kevin.
They're trying to bribe
I got this email from your boy Zuckerberg today.
You're going to make Kevin mad. Watch it.
Earn money with your videos on Facebook. James Spann is eligible for ad breaks, which means you can start including ads in your new and existing on-demand videos to earn money.
You're only going to make Kevin mad. I'm telling you.
I'm baiting him.
What's bad is I spend 90% of my time, saying, Kevin said this was going to happen.
That is high praise then.
So you got I see Dr. John's picture, but I don't see his video. So
are you going to do it?
No.
Okay.
Why? No. I don't have any desire to monetize my Facebook videos.
Okay.
And I will say I get like, I don't know, just a nice little check from Google AdSense every month.
So if you're not going to do it, can I do it?
Yeah, sure. Ah.
Oh man.
So let's see
I'll
here.
send an ad right over.
Yeah.
It'll be an ad for the Madoki something.
I think we should just string together a bunch of clips of Kevin talking about the demise of Facebook and calling Sandberg names and then upload that and see how much money we get.
I'll tell you what we'll do a compilation CD of WeatherBrains 101 segments and my audio bits, and we'll sell that and advertise it on Facebook.
Works
I
for me.
like it. So, Dr. John, what happened to the pack, man? Oh, and let me welcome our television audience. I'm 50 seconds late in doing that. Welcome to those watching us on the television side. We are glad you're here. You know what this is? It's Monday, 30 minutes after the hour. Time to do a little show about weather. I think we're all here. Our Bill, are we ready to go? Curtis?
Yeah, we got our guests and everything. Can they hear us okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yep.
Good, and we can hear you. That's perfect. Hey, Steve.
Oh, man.
Still feel bad about last week. I honestly didn't know that you guys had started.
At 10 minutes till 9.
Well, no, it was like 8:30 or 8:32, and I punched in, and you went, "Oh, here comes Kevin. Stop talking about Instagram." And then I did 20 minutes on social media, and didn't realize until about 15 minutes in that you had already started the show. So I felt a little bad, especially for the guest.
No, that's okay.
Nah, we just edited it to the end of the show, Kevin.
Hey, Aubrey, try your mic there.
Can you guys hear me?
Nope.
Barely.
No, I mean it sounds like you're in a
Oh.
urinal on the other end of the bathroom.
Telephone.
Who's that?
It's mine.
me.
Let it rain.
It's a telemarketer.
So Aubrey, what do we need to do here? Your audio sounds great every week. I don't know what happened. Something changed.
Do you know sign language, Aubrey?
Yeah. For Aubrey, before we start, I got to play one little song here.
Have you tried turning it off and on again? Off and on again. Off and on again. Have you tried turning it off and on again? That normally does the trick.
So you get tech advice on this show. You don't get this on the other weather podcast. Only on this show.
How about now?
You get
It was a tiny little bit louder, but not much.
Nothing?
It's there, but it's not helpful.
Is it one of those mics, blue mics with the volume deal on it?
It's a snowball.
Have you got a volume?
Oh, now it's better.
Hold it right there. Hold it right there.
How about that?
There's a switch on the
good?
back. There's a switch. No, you have to hold it
Yeah,
back.
there's a switch.
I think you've got it on the wrong pole on the pattern.
Nope.
Is there
So
not?
if I hold it like this, you can hear me.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
You look like Edward R.
Yes.
Murrow or something there.
I got a snowball over here. Let me go look at it.
How about
Yeah.
How about now? Any better?
Moderate.
It's like the direction is the other way.
How about now?
Yeah, there's a switch. Hold it up to hold the back of it. There's a switch right in the middle of the back. Oh, there's not. Where is? It should be right above the.
I don't see a switch.
Let me go get
I
mine.
think I have one too, and I think I've got a switch on mine. That's weird. And the switch determines the pattern in which the mic listens.
Look. See,
Kevin's?
Mine does not have a switch.
I know I can see that it doesn't, but it's curious as to why. How old is that thing?
Not that old.
You know, Logitech bought them. Did you see that they bought?
No, I
Blue mic?
didn't.
Yeah.
Did you buy it on the street in New York City?
I bought it on Amazon.
Now it sounds good right there when you
right
said I
there?
bought it on
Okay.
Amazon.
All
It
right.
sounded great.
I put it on a little stand, and I'll just stand closer to the mic tonight.
She bought the snowball that is labeled is spelled with 3 L's.
It's the Snow My God snowball.
All right, so let's get. I just got a note from Tony. He said he swore he heard that old one last week. He said skip this week. So all right, So let me get the recorders going here. This is track 1, and this is track 2. And here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is WeatherBrains, episode number 672 for the 3rd of December, 2018. Aubrey's just had all kind of problems with her microphone tonight. Aubrey, thanks for being a trooper.
I try.
So your mic is working now, so you're having to hold it. Is that the deal?
It's just a little closer than it normally is.
For those listening, she's got one arm up, the other down, and two wrapped around her head.
Thanks for the visual, Kevin.
Yeah.
Kevin's
No, it's all
advice
about-
would be to just lean in, Aubrey.
Which I am.
Yes.
That reference is not
So-
lost on Kevin.
No way.
So, Aubrey, how's life up in Harrisonburg, the lovely, lovely village in Virginia?
It's been great up until about 5 o'clock today when the cold air started coming in. It was nice yesterday. It was beautiful today, and now who knows what we're watching for this weekend. But
I have to say, what happens up there this weekend is the big question we'll discuss in the weather roundup.
Yep, and we've got a mini event on Wednesday to deal with too.
Ooh, okay. Well, awesome. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Dr. John, you're the one sending Aubrey the cold air, aren't you? Did you leave the back door open?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's all my fault. I'd like to send her some rain. It's ridiculous here. We hit the annual average in the first week of September. So here we are in the first week of December. We're at about 58 inches. We're typically 42 for the year. We don't need any more rain. My garden did not do well this year. We had too much rain.
I'm right there with you. I got 58.4.
Oh, there you go. Now we're all suffering from this.
Wow.
So, John, I have to ask, I'm sorry, what happened with the pack, man? What's going on here?
I got to tell you, James, this is what I'm looking at all the time now. I'm going to share a picture with you. This is from October the 15th. Can you see that?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, my boys and I were at Lambeau Field for the Monday night game against the 49ers.
Wow.
It turns out that was the high point of the season.
You ruined the season, Dr. John.
Oh man, it's kind of grim right now. It's tough for all of us. We need to turn the page and look towards next year already.
But that picture is worth every bit of it, though. That's a great picture.
It was a wonderful time. It was a dream come true. It's one of those bucket list items.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would love to see a game at Lambeau Field at some point. The frozen tundra.
There's nothing like it. It's a tremendous event.
That's awesome. In fact, I need to get you. I need to check on our friend Bart Starr. You know, Bart's health is not good, and
Yeah, I know that.
I have not seen his wife. Oddly enough, now this sounds like a joke. I typically see her at the hair parlor. Okay, now I'm only in there for like 30 seconds.
And there's your show title.
I typically see her at the hair parlor.
But no, she I have not seen her lately, and I know that he's really having a hard time, and I don't think he'll ever go back to Green Bay. But he got up there. What was it, last year or 2 years ago?
When
for
Brett
a
Favre
game,
was
so
there.
yeah.
Well, James,
so anyway,
please send my best wishes to
I
Bart
will.
and his wife. If you can see over my shoulder here, that's an autographed picture of Bart Starr.
Yeah. He's just a really, really kind man, and he's done so much for our community here, and loves Green Bay. So I will do that. So that's awesome. So we've got Troy Kimmel, who is down in Austin, Tejas.
Mm-hmm.
Austin's becoming like a little mini Silicon Valley, San Francisco type place now. It's different. It's a lot different than it was 30 years ago.
Yeah, it's
Big.
about 6-hour commute time across town. Everybody stay home. Don't come to Austin.
Yeah.
I think half of San Francisco has moved to Austin.
Yeah,
so,
I agree with you.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's I guess it's good. But boy, you are growing by leaps and bounds. It's I was out there a few years ago, and it was just radically different from the 80s the last time I was there.
Yep, it really is. But it was, Aubrey and John, it was 65 today out at Austin Bergstrom International Airport. Just thought I'd rub it in a little bit.
Thank you so much.
So Kevin Selly is our social media less friend in Wichita Falls, Texas. So What happens out there? Well, we'll talk about it in the weather roundup. But we got this interesting southern storm developing, which will be fun to watch.
Breaking news.
Oh, no.
Oh boy! Uh-oh! Here we go.
We interrupt this program for a CBS Radio Net Alert Bulletin.
Everybody listening live, and then everybody listening on the recorded version later in the week. I want you right now to go to your keyboard and type this in. James, ready? Twitter.com. Are you typing? Twitter.com. James is just sitting. No, Twitter.com. Okay.
All right.
/frequency comics. Twitter.com/frequency comics. And
With no space.
Follow, no space. Follow it right now. Frequency Comics, Twitter.com, Sweet Frequency Comics. Aubrey, are you typing it in?
I am. I'm there right now.
So there's only 13 followers right now.
It's brand new. All right.
Okay.
We're gonna double the follower count here in the next few seconds. I mean,
Please do. That's what we need. That is Matthew's new comic book company that he has started.
Wow.
No, wait a minute. Now you told us to get off social media, and your own boy is on Twitter.
See, I knew this was going to. What episode is this?
672.
So 671 episodes. James makes my head explode with social media comments, and so finally on 672, I get to explode James's head on social media.
Well, I just followed Frequency Comics, and now the follower count is up to we've got it up to 18 from 13 here in the last couple of seconds. So
everybody who listens this week, please follow Frequency Comics on Twitter. Matthew, as you know, has done a lot of work for this program, right? He does
I just retweeted his hello to any WeatherBrains listeners tweet.
That's perfect. That's what we need. So that's what we need. So there you go. Thank you for that.
If you scroll down, I see a slab of meat on a cutting board.
Yeah.
What is this? How does that relate to comics?
It's a paid ad. They knew we were coming.
Oh, God. But the characters that you see there, this is the main character of his first comic book. He's creating his own comic book universe, and the purple character is Encore. That's his character, and he has gone out and he has found he's written the story and he's developed all the characters and the plot lines, and he went out and found an artist in South America of all places to draw his character for him. He created that, and he's also found a letterer, also in South America, who's done. He's got several sample pages done for his first issue, and he's working his way through. He's 18 years old, and he's got his own comic book. So we're pretty proud of him. So Frequency Comics.
Ooh, okay. Well, Bill Murray, let's bring in our guest before they run for the border.
Yeah, I think they may have already. But tonight's guest WeatherBrain number one is the branch chief at NOAA's Earth System Research Laboratory. He has his PhD from OU. Curtis Alexander, welcome to WeatherBrains.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, when we talked on Saturday, we didn't know how all the college football was going to play out, and it did pretty well for you OU guys, it sounds like.
It did, and as it did for Bama.
Well, I don't know about us. We're just there by the hair of our chinny chin chin, and hoping we can keep up with Kyler Murray on the 29th. It'll be.
Hang on here. I got to play some music to make Bill's head explode. I love this song. What a great fight song!
Great fight song.
I mean, this is one of the greatest fight songs in college football.
You have never played Yay Alabama on this show in 672 episodes. I've never heard you play our fight song, not one time.
You got to understand. You walk down. You put your feet in my shoes for a week, and you start playing Auburn or Alabama's fight song. You become Barner, Bammer. Haters will be all over you. I don't even want to go down that path. You know, I love everything and everybody.
Smart man. But tonight's guest WeatherBrain number two is a researcher also at ESRL. He has his PhD from Penn State. Has spent a lot of time at OU. Steve Wagan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Well, so y'all are coming to us from Washington tonight, is that right?
That's correct. We're there in the suburb of Washington, D.C.
Awesome. Well, we're glad you're here. So first, tell us, what does ESRL do? What are you guys up to out there?
So that's a great question. So we're a research lab within NOAA. So we focus on a lot of different aspects of understanding the Earth system. We do focus on, within our portion of the lab, transitioning weather forecast models into operations. So we move them from a research state into one that they run at the National Center for Environmental Prediction. So those are the operational weather forecast models that I think
that's super cool,
isn't it? That really is. So anything you want to add to that, Steve?
Yeah, one of the models that we really like that we run a lot is this thing is called the High Resolution Rapid Refresh, or the HRR, H and 3 R's.
We like it too.
Yeah, we've heard of it. That's a good model.
So it's used a lot for thunderstorms because those are really hard things to predict. And I was always fascinated by storms as a kid. And one of the reasons I went down to OU is I wanted to chase tornadoes, and that's kind of what we look at when we're chasing tornadoes.
So let me interrupt. Start with what you just said, because I find this fascinating. You take it from research to operational. Why? What does that mean? Why can't you just flip a switch and go, here it is, it's working? What's that transition? That's fascinating.
That's a great question. So to make something operational, you basically have to harden it on a supercomputing system that runs and it has an uptime that's guaranteed to be 99.999% of the time. It's actually pretty hard to do. So what we have to do is, at some level, justify the research and development that we've done with the model system to show that this is something that's supporting, NOAA's mission and that should be moved into that particular computer resource.
Wow.
Yeah. So
so that proves that this show will never be operational.
Proving that.
Yeah, really. Got a rim shot for that one.
I sidetracked. I'm sorry, Bill. Go ahead.
No, that's awesome. Talk about the history of the HRR a little bit, Steve. You take it, Curtis. Who wants to jump in there?
Sure. Longer than I have. It goes back about 10 years, and we used to run it kind of a coarser resolution because the computers weren't as strong. And so we just decided we wanted to go down where we put enough grid points in that we could actually get the thunderstorms. And so we started testing it, and it's used by the aviation industry a lot because the thunderstorms in the summer really wreak havoc with travel in the east and getting delays and whatnot. So we started testing it, and the forecasters liked it a lot. And then there is, as Curtis said, there's a lot of testing to kind of make sure it does all the different applications. And so it was first implemented in 2014. And then we did another upgrade, and so we've done another upgrade every couple of years, and it hopefully gets better.
You just recently had an upgrade too, didn't you?
That's right.
That's right. Yep. July of 2018 was our most recent upgrade. So, it's the third version of the HRR that's now operational. So, as Steve mentions, about every 2 years we do a transition from the research to the operations.
And talk about what some of the big things were in this recent upgrade that we've been enjoying.
Sure. So some highlights from this last upgrade. One was extension of the forecast lengths. They now go out to 36 hours every 6 hours. So I know that's been something that the community's been wanting for a while. So we're now producing those longer length forecasts. We're also producing forecasts over Alaska, which is not something we had done previously with the HRR. So we're now making forecasts available there. So we're up to 49 out of the 50 states for coverage. And then we've also reduced some model biases. That's something that we always strive to do, is to reduce errors in the model forecast. So in this case, it was some changes to reduce excessive rainfall and precipitation forecasts, particularly in the first several hours.
And one other thing we've done is we've brought in a lot more data from the satellites. The satellites kind of look at the storms from the top, and getting those data into the models is real helpful too.
So talk about that initialization process for a minute. There's got to be a tremendous amount of data that goes in there. Talk about the vastness of that.
Yeah, Curtis can probably give you the number, but there's hundreds of thousands of individual pieces of data. A lot of it's satellite data, and the radar data was what really revolutionized the HRR, where we could take the radar observations of the thunderstorms and actually put them into the model. Because before that, the model kind of didn't really know about those, and it kind of had to spin them up, which would take several hours sometimes. And so we were able to kind of put them in, and that's what really made those first few hours really kind of a big pickup. I don't know if you want to add some more, Curtis.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, that's one of the key enabling technologies was to assimilate the national radar mosaic. So we're able to bring that in, as Steve mentioned, every 15 minutes for about an hour to initialize the ongoing areas of precipitation, thunderstorms or otherwise, and then let the model move off and make its forecast after that.
So the model is run each hour, right? And so what time does it get initialized and run, and how long does it take, et cetera, all the nerdy things us weather geeks want to know?
Fair question. So we start collecting observations to use right after the top of an hour. So that takes place for the better part of 25 to 30 minutes of collecting all of the observational data. Once that's all done, we begin the process of initializing the model through this analysis, and we can get into more details on what that is. But that takes about another 10 minutes or so. So about 40 minutes after the hour, we start the model forecast. And then that runs for another 30 to 40 or so minutes to produce an 18-hour forecast. And so we make the initial condition or the initial hour forecast available by about 50 minutes after the hour. The first forecast hour is available just before the top of the hour. So now it's basically a real-time forecast at that point. So the valid time is right about when it's made available. And then after that, we're just producing hour after hour forecasts every couple minutes. Like I said, out to 18 hours hourly. And then every 6 hours, we'll now go all the way out to 36 hours.
Wow, that's really, really cool. So talk about the diverse set of stakeholders you guys have to work with and through to make this happen.
So, yeah, I can step back again. Steve mentioned that one of the initial drivers was the aviation community. They had interest in understanding the weather impacts for the national airspace. So that was an interest in getting frequently updated forecasts really for the next 2 to 8 hours. And so that was an initial driver for generating this hourly updating thunderstorm scale model forecast system. And then after that started taking off and more, as again, Steve mentioned, more compute resources became available. We started growing the domain to cover the eastern 2/3 of the United States. That's when I would say the severe weather community really started getting involved. And that was about 2009, 2010, when we were able to cover, again, a good 2/3 of the U.S. And then we went to the entire CONUS shortly thereafter. And after that, I would say other communities that we started getting involved with included the hydrologic community. Another community that tries to predict, obviously, flash flooding or have other water resource issues. So this was a community that we then sort of in 2012 and 13 really started getting involved with. HER actually initializes what's known as the National Water Model. That's actually based in the Water Prediction Center or the Weather Prediction Center. It's based out in Alabama. There's an Office of Water Prediction there. And so another stakeholder was the energy community. They want to have forecasts for wind ramp events, just wind loading on obviously the diverse set of wind farms that we have over the U.S., as well as the solar community for cloud forecasting. And so the renewable energy community was another group that came on board with interest in using the forecast information. And then most recently, we've been leveraging the community interested in, Weather Service in particular, but with wildfire-driven smoke. So we've had a lot of attention on trying to predict where these smoke plumes are going to go after wildfires are initiated. And that's obviously had a big impact this summer and fall, particularly in the western U.S., where the devastating wildfires have taken place. So it's a large community now that have very different, diverse interests and needs for the forecasts from all of these weather-driven events.
And I can add one more thing on the fires. It's interesting. We're using satellite data that can sense the heat from the fires, and then we can use that to introduce basically the smoke and whatnot. And then the model will move the smoke around, and sometimes it goes up and down depending upon the rain and the different storm systems. So we're really combining that satellite data with then the model capabilities to really predict the smoke. And it was pretty helpful this summer. People were using it quite a bit.
So have y'all been pleased with the verification of the smoke forecast so far?
Yeah, we have, and you can actually see sometimes you could see the smoke even in the visible satellite. A lot of times there was just so much smoke in the west this summer, and you could see different streams and different gaps in the smoke. And then you could look in the model, and the model not always it wouldn't have it always perfectly, but it would have it a lot of the times with a lot of accuracy.
So talk for a minute more nerdiness to us. Talk nerdy to us for another minute here about when you say what this model is. Talk about what kind of model it is and how it fits into all the other various model types.
I'll say one thing. I mean, it's funny because when I was a kid, I always loved weather, and they told me you needed to do math for weather, and I couldn't figure out how you needed to do equations for a cloud. It was just it's a cloud. But there's basically a system of equations that they're kind of complicated. So you can't say 2 + 2 is 4, but you approximate them on a computer, and we run it like 15 or 20 seconds at a time, and we step it forward and just do one time step after another, and it will just march forward and evolve the atmosphere. And it's kind of interesting. I'm always amazed that you can actually do that. Even you want to add anything else, Curtis?
Yeah, I mean this model produces forecasts in 3 dimensions about 95 million grid points every 20 seconds. So it's a lot of data points where it has to calculate basically the equations of motion of the atmosphere and produce a forecast at each of those points, updating every 20 seconds. So it's a lot of information that has to be retained and calculated and updated very frequently.
And so running it every 20 seconds, does that keep it from getting too far amok if it ever is going in a certain direction? Is that resolution temporarily important in keeping it on track?
Yeah, that's right. And there's the whole thing you hear talk about the butterfly flapping its wings kind of thing. The model, you want to get the most perfect snapshot of the atmosphere of the current state that you can, and then you launch the model. But from the first time step, it's starting to kind of edge away from the real atmosphere. Sometimes it goes slowly. Sometimes it, after a few hours, it's not even that good. But that's why we keep doing those small time steps. And it's also why we keep resetting it every hour, and we get it kind of a running start. And then the other thing we can do is kind of nice is we can look at the trend from one run to the next. And that kind of gives us more information on, maybe we think we're off here, but we think we're kind of trending that way. So that's kind of why we use all those different features that we do.
Now, I think, and I may be speaking out of turn, I think HER is a convection allowing model, right? So tell us what that is and how that's different from other models that aren't CAM models.
Sure. So there's several classes of weather forecast models. There's numerical weather prediction systems. If the model resolution or the grid spacing is coarse enough, you basically don't explicitly handle processes related to thunderstorms. So you have to account for the effects without actually explicitly depicting them in the model. And so we call those convectively parameterized models. And so you're just taking into account the effects of the thunderstorms without explicitly depicting them. And that's usually when the grid spacing is much larger than the scale of a thunderstorm updraft. As that grid spacing gets smaller and smaller, you sort of violate assumptions related to the parameterization that force you to or allow the model to explicitly handle those thunderstorm updrafts and associated downdrafts. And so then you have what we know as a convective allowing model, or CAM. If the grid spacing gets fine enough, you can actually say it's a convectively resolved model, or even finer, a cloud resolved model. When your grid spacing gets well below, we use these sort of delineations. They're a little arbitrary, but there are some fundamental lines in the sand, so to speak. So we use 3 kilometers as sort of a common grid spacing for convectively allowing model configurations. When you get down sort of below 1 kilometer for grid spacing, you get down to the convective resolving range, and then even cloud resolving when you're down in the hundreds of meters. So we do have some experimental model configurations that do run at even finer resolutions than 3 kilometers.
And I can add a little bit. I'm kind of an old timer, so I'll tell a story of how old I am. When I was doing my graduate work at Penn State back in, hate to say this, the 80s, it was all tied to the computer power. And so I looked at how the resolution, what you could get. But back then, it's all in metric. So we were looking at 160 kilometers, which sounds crazy now, 80 kilometers. 30 was the high resolution, and that's like 20 miles, and the storm might only be 15 miles across. So it goes right between the good points. And so now the fact that we're doing 3, is just amazing to me, but it's been kind of neat to watch it all.
Curtis and Steve, Troy Kimmel here. Got a quick question for you. What is the process that y'all go through as far as, I guess, involving yourselves, the human being, and looking at evaluating each run? If the thing is getting off, if there are errors or that sort of thing, what's that process like?
Right. So we do evaluate our model forecasts in a couple different ways, one of which is actual looking at the forecast fields directly, comparing those with observations. Those observations might be radar imagery that can show radar reflectivity, or even thunderstorm rotation from radial velocity data. We'll also look at satellite imagery. We'll look at where the cloud fields are, compare those to the model's forecast of clouds. We'll also compare the model to soundings that are collected, surface observations from METARs, things like that. So we will look at particular forecast hours and events, and then we'll also collect statistics. So we'll look at these same type of observations over longer periods of time, and we'll make these comparisons between our operational version of the model and an experimental version of the model that we're running locally that we believe is a more advanced version. But the way we test that is, again, looking at individual cases, again, these surface maps, radar imagery, and then, like I said, the statistics that we'll collect for these same sets of observations over longer periods of time that could be days or weeks or even longer in terms of time, to build up sort of a statistically significant sample size for looking at the difference between the operational version and our experimental version, to see if indeed we're closer to the observations or improved what we call skill scores in the experimental version compared to observations. So,
well, and something else, last Friday night here in Central Texas, in the Austin area, about 12, 13, 14 hours out, the HER was, we had indicated a slim chance of thunderstorms, and the HER showed a little band right over Central Texas, over Austin. Stephen, Curtis, this was 12, 13, 14 hours in advance, and I had kind of left the pops down kind of low, and be darn if right at on time, 11 o'clock, I mean, this thing is amazing that how exact it hit it. And that's 12, 13, 14 hours in advance. So thank you for what you do. Now, there's some times when it doesn't go so well, and that's life.
We know about those.
Yep.
But it's really amazing for people like, everyone here that has to deal with this operationally. It's really neat.
And I look at it because one time there was this case of a little snow band in Minnesota, and it was maybe a county-wide. And I'm just amazed that any model, that we can actually build something that can do that. But then there are other times there's a million different ways to miss, and we sure see those.
Well, I got to admit now, when Steve says that he's amazed by something, it doesn't make me feel quite as dumb. Because it really is truly really good stuff, and it's useful. Can I ask you another general question for just a second, just as modelers and people that work with models? What is Curtis and Steve, your response to, and we've all been, James, we've all been in these meetings before, and Kevin and everyone else, where we've heard that there has always been sort of a feeling that forecasters are over relying on the models and probably are not looking out the window as much as they should. What is, from the modeler standpoint, what's your opinion of that in 2018? Are forecasters, all these pretty things on the screen here, are they getting where they're not looking out that window over there?
I think I'll let Curtis take that one.
Well, we do try hard with the model development to make, obviously as accurate of a forecast as we can. That said, it's a tool that should be part of a suite of pieces of information that forecasters use when they make decisions, or again, just producing their forecasts. So I think it certainly is helpful to still be aware of looking at the other observations that are available at the time to complement the model forecasts that we're producing. Yes, we're obviously producing a lot of data since we're updating the model every hour. There's nearly a continuous stream of new information being made available. So I think some of that does speak to effective post-processing, which is a whole nother topic here, of leveraging sort of multiple forecasts, packaging them together, whether you're looking at trends from one run to another run, or in other cases, just pure ensemble forecasts, where we're trying to bring together enough information to give you some measure of the certainty of whether a particular event's going to happen or not. And so as we move more down that path of development, we hope to be able to not only complement, what we think is our best guess for what's going to happen, but provide sort of a range of scenarios that we think is at least possible to make forecasters aware of the other scenarios that could unfold. But again, I think it still complements looking at the latest observations and other information when you're trying to put a forecast together. So it's certainly one piece of many pieces of information. I think, I wouldn't recommend ever being solely reliant on a particular model forecast for making all the decisions. Whatever other information you can help bring to bear to put that information in context is certainly helpful.
And we do see, it seems like the forecasters add skills still on top of the models. So like Curtis said, we like to think we're giving the forecasters better tools so that they can do an even better job. At least that's what we hope to do.
Dr. John, I think you just said a word there that was near and dear to your heart.
Well, say again, Bill.
I think he just said, I think that Curtis mentioned a word that's near and dear to your heart in ensembles.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Before I get there, there was a great paper written 20 years ago, maybe, by Chuck Doswell, and the title was The Human Element in Forecasting.
Mm-hmm.
So that rings true with this discussion you guys are holding right now. I don't think we'll ever remove the human element from forecasting. I think the challenge is how to use the human with all of this output.
Yeah, we know Chuck pretty well too.
Yeah. He's
a good character.
There's different models. They talk about human in the loop or human over the loop or wherever. But the point is the human is still involved in the process of making the forecasts. And I think there is a role to play there that's, humans can identify patterns in a way that it's extremely difficult to extract from a model in an automated sense.
Yeah, I agree 100%. There's always going to be an instance where you need, it's pattern recognition partly as well.
Yep.
The model's not going to give you pattern recognition unless you look at an algorithm that's going to do that. My question though is, are there plans in the works to develop an ensemble for the HER?
Yes, and in fact, there's an experimental version of that is available now. So we make that available in a somewhat regular basis. We're not making an ensemble forecast every hour. We do not have the compute power to do that right now. So we're basically running on the order of 36 configurations of the HER to update the initial conditions, so to speak, that we then produce a subset of those 36 members, and we make about 9 members of a forecast. So there's your ensemble of about 9 different scenarios that could occur. And so we make those forecasts available about twice per day, out about 36 hours. Right now, we've only had the computational power to consistently do that, to go over about the eastern half to 2/3 of the U.S. But we're just about to the point with an increase in our compute power, we'll be able to make CONUS scale forecasts certainly several times a day on a routine basis.
One of the topics that we've talked about here on this program an awful lot is uncertainty and establishing some kind of probabilistic forecast. Mm-hmm. This is the goal. This is a gold mine, producing an ensemble forecast with the HER, I think. So my hat's off to you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's a big science challenge, not let alone a lot of computational resources. We want to be able to produce forecasts that we call, the term is statistically reliable, but basically you want the envelope of solutions to very consistently capture what actually happens somewhere in that envelope. And so that's a key science challenge. A lot of ensemble systems still tend to be what we call underdispersive, meaning that what actually happens on a given day could fall outside the range of scenarios that are depicted. That still tends to happen too frequently.
And the other thing we want to see is we want the spread to be large when the kind of the average skill is low, so that we want to be able to feel like if they all agree, that means that it's going to be the right forecast. And so we have these measures to evaluate the spread skill relationship, which is kind of a tricky thing, but that's what we're after. So that's a measure of a good spread versus kind of a bad spread, where like it might just be all over the place for no reason. So it's kind of interesting. There's a lot of weird details in the ensembles.
Yeah, and Steve, that I think is one of the major challenges for anybody who's in operational forecasting, is to convey just what this spread in a forecast means for the guy that wants to know, do I put a raincoat on or not?
Yeah, that's right. Because they are saying, just tell me what the weather's going to do. I know,
right. Just give me a number.
About 30%, but yet there's valuable information, and we see it with some of the different users. You know, if you have to go do something, you know, either construction or even like aviation, you know, that if you look at the percents, you're going to be better off in the long run if you know what those percents are. So that's information that people can use, and it's kind of what people do every day without even thinking about it, because you know that a given forecast isn't ever going to be exactly right. So you're kind of doing your own little ensemble anyway, thinking about whether you really believe them or not. So,
so you keep talking about computing power, and when you say that, do you mean at the NOAA level or at your labs level or both?
So we actually have a supercomputer that's housed inside of our lab. But when we're talking about computing power, it is really a NOAA-wide thing where there's some research supercomputers and there's an operational supercomputer, and we are limited by our capacity both on the research side and the operations side. So we definitely can and want to continue to see expansion and growth there, so that we can do some of these more sophisticated things like the ensemble forecasting. So. Yeah,
and so we always hear about this supercomputing arms race, between us and the Europeans and stuff like that. Give us some. You guys, give us the evaluation, of where we are with that. Tricky question. Huh?
It's a tricky question. I mean, yes, both groups continue to augment their compute capacity. So both the Europeans and the U.S. Our particular emphasis here is on what we call these regional models and not the global model. That's what we're particularly involved with our own development. But that said, by some estimates, the need we have for research computing is probably on the order of 30 times or more greater than what we currently have. So it's a huge gap from what we have to what we would like or need to do, we think. So there's a long way to go in terms of leveraging the supercomputing power that I think, again, that we would like to have. Now, there are some other avenues that we're actively exploring, and those include cloud computing technologies. So we are looking at other ways of bringing more horsepower into the mix to advance the modeling systems, even outside of what we would call hard iron, which are the formal supercomputers that we manage within NOAA. So I think there are some other avenues here right on the precipice of being able to leverage some of those other emerging technologies to increase our compute capacity much more.
So Amazon stock just went up $10 based on just that little piece of information right there. That's all extremely exciting. So, I know sometimes you have to change the models in season. Do y'all have to change the code based on what season it is on this regional model?
We do. We tend to, so the operational model only gets changed really when we do these implementations. So that's on the time scale of once every 2 years or so, we make a change to that system. But our research computer version of the model will make changes to that with some regularity. We do try to keep it relatively constant in its configuration for most of the warm season, since once that's sort of a lot of our key stakeholder interests fall in that period. It's not exclusive to the warm season by any means, but a lot of the convective processes we want to evaluate obviously are more dominant in the warm season. So we try to have a constant configuration to the model for many months during the warm season, but we'll make changes, particularly in the fall into the winter time, as we incorporate whether they're new model physics or new data assimilation observations or techniques. We'll bring those into the experimental version on a somewhat regular basis. So we could be making changes on the order of once every couple weeks, sometimes several times a week if we're really in an active development period.
And one of the other things that's kind of related to that is the soil temperature and moisture and things that, before I got into operational modeling, I never really thought about, but you can't forecast the surface temperature if you've got the ground either too dry or So we used to use simpler models of that, but now we bring in kind of estimates of that, and even things like Great Lakes temperature and Great Lakes ice cover and stuff like that's really important in the wintertime in the Great Lakes area. So those are things that are changing more frequently now to try to make them more accurate than they used to be a few years ago.
So weather modeling's come a long way from when I was using my Commodore 64 in 1983 to make weather forecasts using my Golden Book of Weather. Huh?
I had a Vic 20.
So talk about.
Hey guys,
Let
me ask, I was going to say, fellas, this smoke product has really been worked well with the wildfires. Kind of describe how that works. The smoke plume product from the HER model.
Sure. So what we're using is satellite information to detect these what we call hotspots, where it's basically a fire radiative power product, and so that gives us an idea of the location and to some extent the intensity of a wildfire, and so then we can insert into the model effectively this particulate matter at those locations where the hotspot, the fire is detected by satellite, and so. Based on the model information, we can estimate about how high the injection height is into the atmosphere of the smoke. And then the model, once the particulate matter, the smoke, there's a particular scale of that, which obviously is very hazardous to breathe in. This 2.5 micron or measurement for the particulate matter. That is basically a tracer that then the model can advect around. Once the model forecast starts, the winds can blow that plume around. Processes like rain can remove that from the atmosphere in the model forecast. But the winds generally will just start to transport that plume around and during the model forecast period. So you can see the transport three-dimensionally, both near the surface and into the upper parts of the troposphere, the movement of that plume around. In fact, you can see it be transported, at least in smaller concentrations, over much of the U.S. When the wildfires were particularly active.
This sounds an awful lot like the high split model.
It's similar to high split. This is in line with the other components of the model integration. So it's basically able to do a three-dimensional real-time transport of the plume, and then furthermore, we can allow that plume to interact with the meteorology of the forecast.
Oh, I know. So it's a high split on steroids.
One of the things you could see where the smoke is real thick, it will actually suppress the high temperatures in the regions where it's real smoky. And so it's kind of a feedback then that the smoke affects the weather, and then that can affect the smoke again. So
yeah,
it's one of the advantages of having so-called the inline chemistry.
Right. So it's one step along the way to this sort of full Earth system prediction capability, because we want a model system that's able to help predict sort of, all hazards, all different types of weather, all different seasons. And so we just, we're trying to build in these capabilities as the science matures and the technologies mature.
Yes, Kevin's asking all kind of great questions over in chat, but he can't talk because he's in a show right now. So I'll ask for him. First question is, how do people get into modeling? Because this sounds like a really important area going forward for meteorologists.
My little answer. So when I was a kid, I wanted to be a forecaster. I loved the weather, but then I saw I didn't necessarily want to do shift work. And I also knew that forecasters, they added their own touches, but they looked at the models. So I wanted to learn what this model was, because it seemed like that's what the forecasters were looking at. So then I started looking at that. And then we both kind of ended up in this area of data assimilation, which is where you blend the observations, get that initial snapshot. And that, to me, got pretty interesting, and especially for the problem that we work on, which is this real short-range forecast. That initial condition is really, really important. So it's kind of one step led to another, and we get to kind of be a forecaster kind of, by proxy when we get to look at the models and stuff. So I think we both enjoy that part of it. So I don't know if that answers it, but.
Yeah, I mean, I was interested and fascinated by weather for, as young as I can remember. But I also love computers and love programming. And I think the merger of the two really brought my interest together in terms of figuring out how these, sophisticated models can run on these supercomputers to make forecasts like we do. So just for me, it was a natural convergence of two interests of mine to get to this point. So.
So how do you know if you're in high school or college and you're working toward meteorology and you have an interest? How do you know if you're cut out for the modeling side?
Good question.
You want to take that one first?
I got to
Steve?
think about that.
What eliminates people? What knocks you out of the process?
It gets math and comp sci are pretty darn important.
Yes.
And
I really think so.
and there's also, in fact, we were just talking about that earlier, that you have to like that operational side of instead of doing a research project where you're going to write a paper, you got to really care about what tomorrow's weather is going to be. And sometimes if the model crashes in the middle of the night, you get the phone call and you got to go figure it out. That's part of the operations, as I'm sure you know from doing any operational forecasting. So I think if you don't have that mindset, it might not be the best place for you.
So you roll over in bed and tell them turn it off and turn it on again. Is that the first rule?
Turn something off and run it again.
That's right.
So, and in a few minutes, we're going to play my favorite game, and we'll do it privately. We'll guess which hotel you guys are in. That's always my
obvious marker behind us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I have to tell by the furniture configuration. So if y'all can move over a little bit, let me see the kitchen there. I can probably tell y'all what hotel y'all are in by the lock set and the refrigerator. Kevin had another really good question, and it ties back into this discussion about the smoke plumes and the high split. Dr. John always adding that outstanding, information to the show. Does the model resolve pyrocumulus, in the process, or does that have an effect on what it does?
So the particulate matter does have the capability, and we've put it in there to interact with the microphysics scheme. So the scheme that does produce clouds and precipitation in the model, there is a level of interaction between the two. Are we producing classic pyrocumulus structures? No, not at this point. But there is this first step in that direction of being able to, like I said, have the components of the model physics that do produce clouds and rain, see some of the impact of these aerosols effectively that are being produced from the smoke, because that does obviously help aid in the cloud formation process. So we're a step along the way to being able to produce things like a pyrocumulus.
I'm going to be a weather geek. I think you guys would probably know there was a fire in eastern New Mexico or Texas Panhandle that produced a storm that became severe and had hail in the eastern Panhandle. And that would be a great test to see if you could get a model to do that. We haven't done that.
Yep.
That would be pretty interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a pretty high order set of things that happen there, but yes.
It'd be interesting to see what the Cape was in that. Okay, we'll stop being geeks.
No, the geekier the better. That's what we love. So talk for a minute about the team that you guys have together. What does it take to do this? How many people? What sort of disciplines are they? And all that sort of stuff.
So the branch that I supervise has about 25 or so people in it. And then we have a sister branch that's got probably about another 25 or so in it. So in total, we're dealing with on the order of 50 people that do various aspects of model development or data assimilation or physics development or verification of the forecasts or some of the related software development. So it's quite a few people. Like I said, we do have people that have expertise in these separate areas. Like I said, one is data assimilation, how we blend observations and model forecasts together. And there's sub-disciplines within that in terms of which observation types people are more familiar with using. We have those that are working on model physics development or are familiar with the model's dynamic core. There's also those that, again, that are helping us do the verification. So they use the same observations that we assimilate to help set those initial conditions up for the model. We're going to use those for validation and verification to help inform how well we're doing. So it's a lot of different people involved in this overall process.
And I can add a little bit. We do have these two camps, as Curtis talked about, the data assimilation where you're blending the observations in the model physics. And so we can kind of blame each other sometimes. If there's a certain error, we'll say it's the physics people. They'll blame the data assimilation people. But
so there is some contention that develops there from time to time.
Absolutely.
Mostly good natured,
friendly rivalry. Yeah.
Good. Give us all the drama. We want to hear drama.
I'll say one analogy. Curtis talked about the biases is in the model physics. If you've got a process you just don't have right, it's going to keep getting warm. Say, And then the observations can keep correcting it when you cycle. But we make an analogy. It's like a car. If the alignment's off, it's going to keep trying to drive off the road. And you want to be able to have the car that's tracking pretty straight. So you want your physics to be good and balanced. And then you're just making smaller changes with the data simulation. So in principle, they work together. And the worse your physics biases are, the harder the work is for the data simulation. So that's why we tell them they got to get their act together first. We're data simulation.
Yeah, we're a little biased in this ourselves. So
they don't want to miss all our dirty observations and everything.
So for the real computer science geeks in us out here, what is it actually coded in? What language or languages,
okay.
or
Right. So
it may not be an easy question.
Actually, it's easier than you might guess. So most of the model system itself, and actually the data simulation software currently, is written in variants of Fortran, which now probably ancient for,
that's what most people say.
It seems ancient for the up and coming and current generation of people involved in computer science. Fortran definitely seems like it's seen a bygone era. But the reality is that particular programming language scales particularly well. So when you have to do these supercomputing type problems, that's a language that is particularly designed for fast math. And so that's why it continues to still be used in those particular applications. Now we do have some more recent software development. We're replacing some of the components with like the data simulation software with ones that are now written at least in part in C++. So that's a little more probably of the vein that current generation students would recognize. I know Python's a very particularly popular programming language nowadays. That said, that's not, again, something that's typically used for these massively parallel supercomputing type problems that we have to do for numerical weather prediction. So I think Fortran and things like C++ are going to be around for a long time to come in those areas.
So my CS 105 from 1982 is still applicable, huh?
Absolutely.
Because a lot of when we hire young people, they say Fortran, what's that?
Yep.
So you end up with a grouchy 46-year-old, huh? Who remembers well, that with his pie T-shirt, he's ready to program. So Dr. John talked about ensembles, and I know he's got questions about future plans. So, kind of fill us in on some of the things we can look forward to.
Okay. Right. So right now there's a multi-model ensemble system that's run operationally at NCEP. It's known as HREF, for those that are familiar with that. Yeah. For high resolution ensemble forecast. That's comprised of 8 individual forecast members, produces forecasts twice a day, technically 4 times a day out to about 36 hours. So what we want to do is move down to a point where we have a single model as the basis for the entire ensemble system. So we'll be having a single model core that feeds, again, probably on the order of 8 to 10 members that make forecasts out to, I'd probably say at least 36 hours, maybe we'll go out to 48 or a little beyond eventually to make these single model forecasts that have other sources of differences that feed the different solutions to the model, to the members. One of the key technology or aspects of that ensemble system is you want all of the members to be equally likely in their scenarios. And that's a key attribute that doesn't exist currently. You'll see some members of the current ensemble system that have a high bias, some have a low bias. So some are going to over forecast, others are under forecasting regularly. With a single model pure ensemble design, all the members' scenarios should be equally likely. Now, maybe they're all forecasting the same scenario, then that should be very likely. But you want all of the membership to have equal chance of outcome.
Dr. John, I think I've learned more tonight in this hour than we have in a long time. Would you?
I'm shaking my head because I'm old enough to remember the NGM model and how spectacular we thought that was. And where we are now just blows my mind.
I'm old enough to remember the LFM model, the limited fine mesh.
That's right. 6-layer model.
Hey guys, just quickly, a very quick overview. So for practitioners, operational guys that come in and look at the 3 kilometer HER versus the 3 kilometer NAM, what are the basics and the differences in the physics involved in those models?
I can take a stab at that. So yes, there are some fundamental differences in how the data assimilation and the model physics are configured between those two systems. The HER is designed to, again, bring in this radar data every 15 minutes for about an hour before it makes each of its forecasts. The NAM has a different configuration of where it does its forecasting. It actually cycles data for about 6 hours before producing a forecast. The microphysics and the other aspects of the physics components in the HER are different than the NAM. We have in the HER these 5 different types of clouds or precipitation that are depicted, that there aren't as many of those in the NAM. So there's some nuances there in terms of the physics and the data assimilation that differ between the two. Another thing is, of course, we produce the hourly forecasts from the HER. The NAM is generally just making 6 hourly forecast updates. So there's some differences there as well. Now the NAM does run out longer forecast lengths, about 60 hours. The HER's out to 36. The other thing I'll mention though is that the NAM configuration is frozen. It has not actually had any changes made to it now in a couple of years. So there's not intention to develop the NAM itself any further. It's one of those systems that's basically been, like I said, frozen, and the development efforts have been moved elsewhere. We're moving toward what's known as this unified forecast system. So we're trying to ultimately merge a lot of these different modeling systems into a more unified framework, so that ultimately we have sort of a singular global down to storm scale model configuration. So this UFS, or unified forecast system, is something we're moving in the direction of. So that's another aspect of where we're going. But again, yes, a lot of differences there between the HER and the NAM in that aspect. The HER, we are developing still at this time. We plan to implement one more version of it in early 2020. But like I said, the NAM is frozen and will not see any more development in its lifetime.
Do you guys work with Jeff Craven and this national blend of models?
Okay, that's it, James. You got it. Thank you.
Yes, we do have interaction with Jeff Craven. We know him pretty well.
We were just talking to him today. Even.
That's right. He's at the same meeting that we're at.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
Oh yeah,
guys. From a data gathering standpoint or a sensing standpoint, what would you like to see realistically? And if money, budget, whatever were no option, what would you like?
I'll take a stab at that. One of the things that I never knew until I got into this whole business was the importance, this gets a little geeky, but of the aircraft observations. It's kind of our number one set of observations. We do these experiments where we move different observation types, the radiosondes, the aircraft data, the satellite data. And the aircraft data are huge. And one of the key things in the old days, when you didn't do hourly updating, you just had the radiosonde data every 12 hours. But the aircraft data, as good as they are, if we could expand to get a lot more of the general aviation, the GA pilots and stuff at the regional airports, and get more moisture observations throughout the top of the boundary layer and getting cap structure, those we would think would really be helpful. And it's actually something that, I mean, it's easy to say, but it's not like you have to go build a new sensor. You got to get the sensors on more planes and get the data transferred.
Yeah, there's a potential also for unmanned aircraft systems to also have some measure of meteorological instrumentation on them. And if those are also able to sample the boundary layer near the surface, any of that type of information that can be collected and disseminated in near real time is going to help us. Because we have, I think, still a limitation in the amount of sort of in situ thermodynamic information is pretty limited compared to other types of observations that we know can help us improve the forecasts. So that's something I think we're looking forward to.
I've seen some of those drones that they're working on, Norman, and seems really cool and super dangerous.
Well, I mean, unless you're not, right next to it when it's taking off or moving around, Yeah, that is a technology that I think with some instrumentation attached to them, you're just going to see more and more of them out there. And I think that's, ripe for collecting more observations. So I hope we can certainly leverage some of that down the road.
Are they going to be a problem for air traffic, though?
So the FAA has regulations for how those are to be operated. And so they're very clear about where and when you can operate them. There's a lot of places that still have line of sight restriction for operating those. So you have to be able to have visual on the, you can't just let them be completely autonomous. So that may evolve down the road, but that's kind of where we're at right now. So we'll see how, that proceeds in the future.
Any idea how high they would they're shooting to go with those things?
I think again, there's vertical limitations to their operation. It's probably upwards of 1,000 feet, maybe a few thousand feet tops.
Not much then.
Yeah, so not up, and certainly not up at cruising altitude. So, but even if it's sampling parts of the boundary layer for moisture, temperature, pressure, etc., that's some very valuable information for us.
Okay, guys, we got to take a quick break here. And Aubrey, let's check your mic. Are you cool with your mic and doing some email here?
Sure. How about it?
Oh, all right. Sounds good. So, yeah. And let me just say, we played Tony Rice last week, and Tony thought we played an old one, and we played the right one, I think. So we don't have a Tony Rice report. He'll be back with the new astronomy report next week. But in the meantime, I have a funny feeling just maybe Aubrey has a little email. Just maybe.
Letters. We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
We have some letters. All right. I will lean in to make sure you can hear me nice and close. The first one, we actually had two this evening. This one comes in from Mason Gliva. I have a show suggestion. Could you guys do another episode about a severe weather event? I loved the 1974 super outbreak episode. And apparently Mason also watched the first episode that I was on. And supposedly I'd said something to the effect of, after they tied me up, I beat them down. And it made him laugh.
Okay.
I'm going to have to go back and watch that.
What
happened? An episode, and I know I wasn't drinking on that one because I know I was at work.
Funny things these listeners notice.
And episode 483.5, the pre-show was hilarious. I wonder if that's the same one I'm thinking of. All right, so thank you, Mason. We appreciate it. We'll take the suggestion to do another severe show. Josh Mumbrew, guest suggestion. His name is Justin Pabelon. He's from Wisconsin. Back in 2013 or so, he started a page called Wisconsin Weather, and it's a page that is increasing rapidly. I think he would be a great person to have on WeatherBrains. So thank you, Josh. We appreciate that. And Tarmo sent us an email. It was earlier today, something worth discussing about access to television coverage. So Switzerland is setting an alarming example by becoming a country where television over traditional antenna will cease to exist next year. Mm-hmm. And that will end in June of 2019. So that's quite interesting.
It's pretty big.
And scary for all of us.
Well, is that going to happen here? And I think it probably will one day.
Yeah. They'll reallocate those frequencies somewhere else. Yeah. Yep. Probably it'd be the social media frequencies.
All right, Jeff Staple from Muskegon, County Skywarn. Good evening. Just listened to the last episode of WeatherBrains. I've been an amateur radio operator since 2007 and was a Skywarn coordinator for Muskegon in Michigan for several years. We have a great relationship with the office in Grand Rapids. I'd love to be on the program and maybe do a pre-screening with Bill. Amateur radio has been, and I believe always will be, a part of relaying severe weather information to the NWS. We talked about that last week, so very interesting. Jay Farlow also sent us an email from Fort Wayne, Indiana, helping to find us some guests about a ham radio show. So that would be, we talked about that last week. That would be interesting. And Let's see. Richard Cook sent us in. Let's see. It was UK weather forecast. Danger to life alert. Britain braces for double vortex super tempest. A very alarming and scary photo that kind of resembles Mary Poppins, to be honest. Her umbrella flying over the UK with a very scary forecast. So very interesting. And I think that is all I have. So if you have an email for us, a guest suggestion, a show suggestion, we would love to hear it. Just email at weatherbrains.com. Email at weatherbrains.com. Don't forget to send or follow us on the Twitter and the Facebook. But of course, you cannot follow Kevin. You have to stalk him like we used to do back in the day.
Check in with Matthew and he'll relay the message.
There you go.
Angry tweets to Matthew.
So James, to follow up on Aubrey there, we need the breaking news.
Again. Okay, stand by. Here we go.
We interrupt this program for a CBS Radio Net Alert Bulletin.
Our people are in touch with all the ham radio folks, and we will have a ham radio show on January the 7th. So be ready for that.
All right, cool. So I know that Steve and Curtis have to get out of here. They've been up all day. They're in some weird hotel room.
Is it one of Bill's hotel rooms?
Bill, did you put these guys up in one of your places?
No, that doesn't look like one of mine. Mine have more roaches in them.
Wow. So let's do weather roundup here. And you guys are in Washington, is that right? Washington, D.C.?
That's right. Yep.
So are you there all week, or is this how long is this shindig going on here? Is this a week-long thing?
It was actually supposed to be 3 days, but due to the presidential proceedings on Wednesday here, we actually are curtailed just to today and tomorrow. So it's 2 days.
Okay. Well, so you're up there close to Aubrey. Aubrey's over in Harrisonburg, Virginia. Yep. So I guess the weather's kind of quiet and colder up there, huh?
Yeah, we just had frontal passage, so it's dried out a bit. It's certainly foggy and damp. We got in late yesterday afternoon, but now the front has come through. Things are drying out, cooling down.
Welcome to our world.
It all flows from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where Dr. John left the back door open up there.
That's right.
So Curtis and Steve, we'll let you guys get out of here. Have you got anything you need to plug? Website, Twitter account, face bag, anything? Here's your chance. Plug away. Go. The mic belongs to you.
Oh, that's okay. We just certainly appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk with you guys this evening. So certainly enjoyed the experience. And like I said, if others have questions or follow up after the fact, we can certainly answer those questions via email or however. So
yeah, thank you very much.
We'll put your email addresses up on the website. But listen, as a low-level practitioner, thank you for what you do.
Yes,
I can't thank you enough, and I don't think you are thanked enough. But I can speak. I know for everybody on this show that's in operational meteorology. Goodness. How many times has that made me look like a stinking genius?
Yes. Yes.
And I just can't thank you enough. And yeah, you get burned every once in a while, but so what? You know, I mean, I've been doing this 40 years. And if you take the experience you've had in 40 years and a little bit of knowledge and all the tools in the toolbox and use them correctly, you really can be successful in this. But that HER model has just been stinking good.
Yep.
So thanks, guys. We appreciate it.
And thanks to Alan Gerard for recommending y'all to us when we went to him and asked him about who to get. So this was a great find. Thank you, guys.
And we appreciate the feedback too.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So if you see forecasts of good or bad quality down the road and want to let us know, feel free.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Email at hRRR.com.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks a lot, guys.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Okay. Thanks. All right. So let's continue the weather roundup. So, John, the cold is coming from you. So what happens? Are you going to catch any of this storm up there this weekend or early next week? I guess that's south of you, huh?
That's the question, James. I always get really nervous when there's a very tight gradient just to the south. I think I've seen these models move in this direction, trend to the south, and then we get within 36 hours and we're getting back towards the north again. So I think we have to pay attention to the northern periphery of the storm. I think that Aubrey may in fact see something out of this.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of the trend where they start to they hit you and then they start sagging south and then they start to come back to the north.
Oh,
So
I think that's very real.
yeah, absolutely. So and it's the questions are piling in and the phone calls have started.
And this is next Sunday, really?
Yeah, exactly. At the very earliest, maybe Saturday night, but yeah, we're looking at Sunday.
I know that this storm system has prompted Greg Fischel, who is one of the old timers, like I am. But Greg and I have been doing this 40 years. He called out on the tweeter tonight for all operational meteorologists to stop posting and displaying deterministic model output on events like this 5, 6, 7 days in advance, and encourages everybody to use ensemble output. Yeah, he's pretty bold in this, and I thought that's probably a pretty good call.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, Aubrey, about the 12 inches of snow on the GFS for snow depth for
GFS
in Central Virginia.
Yeah, absolutely. I never ever post a model. I don't even post them. Even if I'm confident in it, I'm going to post my own. My own forecast. I mean that's coming from an area that I live in where the models are good, but we take them with a grain of salt here. But yeah, I don't get it. And there's been a lot of explanations. I saw Chris Michaels, Brad Panovich on why, really talking about what we can do at what day, so many days out leading up to events, what's realistic, what's not realistic, and what we have to watch for and why we can't pinpoint details so far out.
And we have to remember it's model guidance, not a model forecast.
Yeah. Exactly. And I feel very blessed to live in this area, which is so challenging. I mean, there's a lot of challenging areas where I don't have a lot of data because it makes me doubt the models. I don't depend heavily on the models. And I think for a lot of people, we need to take a serious look at that. The models are good, but the models are still guidance and they're not meant to be perfect.
I like to wait until the upper level system actually is within the continental upper air network.
Yeah.
That's one of the keys.
Yep.
Yeah, well, let's start with Troy. Troy, this is coming from you, man. You're starting this ruckus. So what's the deal?
Hey, as part of this is Kevin's deal too. So still part of it. But we're about 50 degrees here in Austin, and scattered. We're 8,000 scattered, 25,000 scattered out the airport right now. So it's not a bad evening. I think 50s the next couple of days, but that system comes back in quickly. And as Kevin will tell you, I think it'll be interesting that we're going to have a frontal system kind of tying up into an area where a surface low is going to develop. And some indications that some parts of central Texas, 4 or 5 inches of rain. The WPC QPF has us right at 3 inches here in the Austin area between now and the beginning of the weekend. And then some of that colder air actually slides back down to the state of Texas after that. But going to be interesting around here, given the fact that we've gotten a little drier lately, potential for some heavier rain, Kevin, at least this far south.
Seems like it's trending a little too far away from me to be a big impact. And I just, having been in Texas so long, and Troy would verify this, anything that even smacks remotely of a cutoff low in the southwestern part of the country, the models are going to want to try and be a little more progressive than oftentimes reality. Absolutely. And that throws the whole thing into a whack, because then where's your cold air and how far does it come in and how fast? Right. So forth. So the waiting is the worst part, right?
It is.
It's the hardest part. Bill Murray down in the deep south looks quiet this week until the weekend. And the question, of course, we're fighting down here too is where's the rain, snow, ice line? And looks like it might be somewhere up along Interstate 40 in Tennessee, not down here where we are, just cold and wet.
43 here tonight after a beautiful day, like Aubrey was saying yesterday here. And looks like we might have 2 inches of rain, though, by Sunday morning, probably.
Yeah. It just looks cold and wet and soaking here for us, but again, just north of here. So want to comment on the end of the hurricane season? 15 named storms, 8 hurricanes, 2 majors, which was greater than forecast by the seasonal forecast people.
Well, you know,
Any thoughts?
one thing, James, that I think we ought to consider. This is something you just don't hear in the United States. And last summer, I was out with visited the folks at the Weather Service office in Guam. That Western Pacific area, this hurricane season has been amazing out there. They've been hit several times, including the storm that hit Saipan.
Yeah, late.
I mean, it's just been for Chip and the people all out at the Weather Service forecast office out in Guam. It's been a really, really tough season out there. So it's just been bad all the way around.
Yeah, but we should probably do a tropical show here at some point to go look back on the 2018 season. But yeah, I got to run here. So Kevin, Bill, one of you guys, Aubrey, Troy. We'll do picks of the week, and my pick, and then I've got to do some television. The Smithsonian Channel is doing a special on the super outbreak of 1974, and that runs, I believe, initially this weekend. So if by chance you're interested in the super outbreak of April 3rd and 4th, and we've done a number of shows on that here, including some really good ones of those people that worked it. But if you want to see their perspective, it'll be on the air, I think, Saturday or Sunday night. But anyway, there's a link on weatherbrains.com with that information. So having said that, I got to beam up into a TV guy. Bill, you take it.
Yeah, let's talk tropics for a second, because there were a lot of interesting takeaways from this tropical season. So what was the number of subtropical systems that were involved? That set a record. And of course, Hurricane Michael goes without without even any discussion, is just a terrible, amazing storm for sure. So, Troy, do you have any takeaways from this tropical season?
No, I'm just, again, just what we saw with Michael and so forth, and having my connection I do with the weather office out in Guam. It's just amazing, that area and how it was affected. But overall, I think there are a lot of people glad to see this season, at least we hope, gone now. At least that's my feeling anyway.
Yeah, Florence broke records in both South and North Carolina for rainfall from a tropical cyclone. And that was another
good instance, Aubrey and Bill, that you don't just always look at the wind. The Carolina stuff, the heavy rain was the deal. And I think we get too focused on maybe the center of the storm and the high winds, and all of a sudden Mother Nature throws these floods at us and the slow movement that we saw in that system.
Well, and I think that's the other thing that needs to be brought up is we had Hurricane Florence, which was basically, the speed of Harvey. You have two systems in back-to-back years. I was using graphics for Florence that I had made for Harvey that I thought I will never have to use this again. And it's incredible. You talk about the speed of that system and how slow moving it was in back-to-back years. And that was quite unfathomable.
But there's been some really interesting research done, and I'll have to get the citation here, but anecdotally, we've been thinking that recent tropical systems are slowing down at landfall. Well, there's been some really interesting research done about the northward migration of the polar jet during the summer season, which it does anyway.
Right.
But even more so. So when these tropical systems make landfall, there's no steering current. And that has actually been documented now in the literature.
All right.
So we have to become more and more aware of the fact that when these systems make landfall, they may in fact not go anywhere.
Wow. That's scary. That's scary. When you talk about some of these systems moving less than 10 miles an hour.
Right.
That's and not just to coastal areas, to inland areas, whether it be, up the Mississippi, up into the Gulf Coast, into the Southeast, into the mountains of North Carolina and the mountains of Virginia, or even into the mountains, like we saw with Irene with the Vermont situation. This is serious.
And you don't really realize how busy we were in early September in the Atlantic, because that period from the 1st through the 12th, during that time, I don't remember what the number was, but I think it was the most storms during that period since 1999.
We had 4 all at once, didn't we? At one point?
Yeah, we had 4 simultaneously.
Yep.
And that hadn't happened since what, Dr. John? 2008, maybe?
8 or 5.
But I did a post for our partner on our weather blog, the Alabama News Center. They asked for one on Saturday, and it got kind of lost in our severe weather coverage. But I did 25 interesting takeaways from the 2018 hurricane season, and there were amazing takeaways for every storm. And then I got to Oscar, and I said the great thing about Hurricane Oscar is, and the most amazing thing was, there was nothing interesting about Hurricane Oscar. So that was a good way to end the season. And now we'll get ready to end the show. Dr. John, you got a pick of the week for us?
Oh, absolutely. There's been more than we need in terms of late season severe across the deep south. And then, as you mentioned, Bill, Saturday we had an outbreak in Illinois, almost unprecedented for this time of the year. So I did a little digging in the archives, and on this date in 1978 was the Bossier City F4.
Yeah.
So that is my pick of the week, is a link to the Shreveport NWS and an article about that F4 tornado.
And I had a discussion this morning, Aubrey, with our mutual friend Jen Nairmore, who has the Great Tornado Talk website, and her tornado of the day, Dr. John, is that 1978 tornado. And the interesting thing is, 8 months earlier there had been a tornado in almost the same location.
But also the same year was the Cleveland bomb.
That's January, true. That's exactly
January
right.
78. Set all-time pressure records in Cleveland. So yeah, what a year 78 was.
Wow.
Yeah, that really was. I have books back here in my weather library that are talking about the coming ice age from 1977.
Yes, I remember that.
So that's a great pick, Dr. John. Thank you very much for that. Kevin, can you add a pick of the week?
I'm going to go with Frequency Comics, twitter.com/Frequency Comics.
Oh, you stole my pick, Kevin. Doggone it. I'll have to take the foghorn now. We'll have to have Matthew on the show again pretty soon. Aubrey, did we get your pick of the week?
No, you did not. But my pick of the week, we had the big Alaska earthquake. And a lot of people on social media were reminiscing about the 1964, even bigger earthquake. And so I did a little dig. I didn't know I knew some about it. I knew about Lituya Bay and I knew some things, but I went online and I found a really good documentary that I thought on YouTube. So it's definitely worth a watch if you like weather history.
I thought there was some tweet that came out, and James retweeted it, but it showed the effect that seismographs around the North American region, and you could see those waves going out from the earth.
A lot of people were tweeting, their local seismograph station and the waves that were registered, which is really cool.
Yeah, that was amazingly cool. Troy Kimmel.
Yeah, continuing my trend of not having a website, but I want to kind of piggyback on Aubrey's just a bit. Amazing, guys. John and Aubrey, and I know she's had to take off, but good job by the TV people up in Anchorage. How would you like to have been? And did you see some of that video from the TV newsrooms during the morning shows that last week? And they did an amazing job. And also the weather service. One of the things that I got on was NWS chat out in Anchorage right after the earthquake. And that was real interesting to look. So I don't have my pick of the week in a link form, but just to shout out to the weather service up in Anchorage and all the TV stations up in the Anchorage area for doing a very good job. And amazing thing to me, guys, no fatalities.
Yeah, right.
That was really amazing.
Yeah, I loved, and Troy, I know you'll appreciate this because you're an aviation guy. You when you talk about the weather roundup, you talk about the observation from the airport with the ceilings. I love that.
Yeah. Did y'all see, by the way, speaking of that, Bill, and I promise we'll go, John, did you see the video or hear the audio rather of the FedEx plane going into
Exactly. That's what I was going to bring up.
It's amazing audio. And I'd love to be on the air traffic control tower, but I'll take that back. Because they sound like they were a little bit stressed at the time, and I don't blame them. So
I wonder what that FedEx pilot was thinking when that first, go around. And he had to be looking on there. What is it?
I would have thought, I think we'll go around.
Wow.
Because it took several seconds for the controller to come back and say we've had an earthquake.
Yeah, exactly.
So they probably in the plane were like, "What in the heck? Is there something on the runway? What in the world is going on?"
Yeah.
And I don't know what point in the landing that FedEx plane was, but we'll have to ask our friend Corey Gimpler and up at FedEx to shed a little light on that one at some point. So that's pretty cool. All right. Any other business we need to bring before this August group tonight?
I don't think so. Are the paychecks on the way?
Yeah, they're on the way. They were delayed, Troy. So
thank you. I trust you, Bill.
Yeah, they're coming. I promise.
They were in that plane that couldn't land.
Yeah, there were almost 2 FedEx trucks on I-75 in Georgia that ran into each other.
Okay.
That's what we're going to say at least. So, we're getting to the end of the year here. Jeremy Bauer, who was our guest panelist last week, he'll be on with the folks from the National Weather Service in Honolulu next week. That's going to be a fun show. We'll have Gary Allen Fine, the author of a great book called Authors of the Storm.
I've ordered it.
Yep, good. Aubrey says it was a little dry, but I promise the show won't be dry. We're going to have Jim Stefkovich and Keith Stellman join us that night to talk about a lot of that information.
Those guys are great. They're 2 of my favorite.
Yeah, they are. And of course, Jim, was in the Chicago office after Gary wrote this book. And these are all my Post-it notes from the book. That may be like a 3-week show.
Oh, my goodness.
We may start it on December the 17th and end it on January 2nd. So that could be a long one. Of course, Rich Thompson is going to join us on the 20th. And I have it on good information that Greg Carbon is going to join us that night, too.
All right.
And, close out the his top 75 events of 2018, and then we'll be shut down for James's vacation. But all right, if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion that we adjourn, gentlemen, since we've lost Aubrey. But WeatherBrains is the weekly netcast. It's all about weather. We do it generally on Monday nights. That'll get a little askew over the next few weeks, but stay tuned for those show notes and on the website to determine exactly when we'll tape the live shows. We'll release them into the live at their normal occurrences. But if you want to join us right here for the live show, be looking for those notes as they come out. But until next week, when our guests will be the folks from the National Weather Service in Honolulu and Jeremy Bauer, I'm Bill Murray for the whole WeatherBrains gang. Have a great week. And as I always say, keep an eye to the sky because you'll always have something fun to look at. All right, guys.
All righty, guys.
Thank you. I'll good to see you, Dr. John. Troy.
Take care.
Take care.
See you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Ooh. Hey, guys, thank you all for watching. About to fire up Song of the Night over on the Insta. My Instagram is SpanWX. You want to watch over there. But thank you guys for watching. Great show tonight. Boy, that was just fantastic. Learned a lot about modeling, especially the her. And I can't wait to listen to this. I love to listen to the show after we record it because I'm doing some other things in here, and it's always better to listen to it driving down the road. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys next Monday night for WeatherBrains. Have a great week, and God bless. Bye-bye.